Ever heard of a child so hidden he didn't exist on paper? 65 years of silence. A box in the woods. And truth that refused to stay buried. Stick around. You're about to meet Joseph Augustus Zarelli, the boy who finally got a name, maybe a little justice, someday. Fair warning, his story most definitely will anger you. Welcome back, my beautiful, curious, slightly unhinged truth seekers and lovers of the uncomfortably real. You've tuned into Whistle to Brew, the only place where we don't just sip the tea, we squeeze every drop of truth, strain it for facts, and serve it piping hot, with enough side of sass, sharp enough to make your grandmother gasp. Tonight's story isn't about a mystery anymore. It's about a child, a real one, and a silence that lasted 65 years. Take a breath. You might know. A child without a record. Joseph August Zarelli was born on January 13th, 1953, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to Mary Elizabeth Abel and Augustus John Zarelli. His birth was officially registered, but beyond that single document, Joseph's life left almost no trace. Neither parent kept records on him. There are no confirmed records of school enrollment, medical care beyond early childhood, church attendance, or interactions with social services. Can you imagine vanishing in plain sight? Investigators later confirmed that there was no pediatric files, no baptismal records, no kindergarten rosters, and no welfare documents tied to Joseph's name. He did not appear in census updates in a way that accounted for him. No neighbors later recalled seeing him. No relatives mentioned his existence. Crucially, neither parent ever reported Joseph missing. He did not appear in foster care records, adoption logs, or institutional registrations. For investigators decades later, this absence would become one of the most haunting aspects of the case. A child who seemed to have existed mostly entirely outside public view. Let that sink in. His parents never noticed he was missing. A Philadelphia police officer would later state in a 2022 press conference. As Philadelphia police would later state during a 2022 press conference, this child was never reported missing. That fact alone tells us as much as any piece of evidence. On February 25th, 1957, Frederick Bonosi, a 26-year-old man checking rabbit traps in the Fox Chase Woods of northeast Philadelphia, noticed a cardboard box, partially hidden among the bushes. Inside was the nude body of a small boy. Believing he would get into trouble for his illegal traps, Bonosi left without contacting authorities. Why would someone who found the child's dead body not report it? The following day, February 26, 1957, a college student stumbled upon the same box and immediately alerted police. The cardboard box had once held a JCPenney's bassinet, suggesting it came from a middle-class household. Inside, the boy was wrapped in a thin blanket and placed carefully, not dumped haphazardly, an unsettling detail that suggested familiarity, not abandonment by strangers. A discovery in Fox Chase. In 1957, Fox Chase was a transitional landscape, neither fully rural or fully suburban. Tree lines backed up against row homes, roads cut through wooded patches, and locals knew well. Investigators quickly noted that the dump site was accessible by car and required deliberate navigation. This was not an impulse drop-off. Police later stated the location appeared chosen, not at random. The cardboard box shows no sign of long-term exposure to the elements, and there was no waterlogging or decomp, consistent with weeks outdoors. Investigators concluded Joseph had likely been placed there with within days of discovery. Equally important, there was no drag marks, there was no branches, there was no disturbed soil. Joseph had been carried. Whoever killed him carried him and carried enough to wrap him up in a blanket, but not enough to love him and keep him safe and alive. A senior detective later summarized the scene this way: someone brought him there. Someone held him. Someone did not want him found immediately, but they didn't want him lost forever. Someone tried to cover their tracks, but they left us breadcrumbs. The little boy was estimated to be around 4 years old, weighing just 30 pounds, significantly underweight for his age. The medical examiner determined he had suffered long-term neglect and repeated abuse. The findings in the autopsy include cause of death, blunt force trauma, extensive bruising in various stages of healing, old and recent scars, a surgical scar on an ankle, and scarring to the groins and chin. Evidence of recent grooming, a fresh haircut, and fingernails neat and clean, and nicely trimmed, and sadly, an empty stomach, and a mild case of pneumonia. There was no evidence of sexual abuse, but the cumulative injuries painted a picture of a child who had endured sustained violence before his death. Fingerprints were taken, but no matches were found. No missing child reports anywhere in the country matched him. Autopsy and evidence of abuse. The medical examiner emphasized that Joseph's injuries were not consistent with a single incident. Bruising appeared in multiple stages of healing, indicating repeated trauma over months. The surgical scar on Joseph's ankle suggested prior medical intervention, likely very early in his life. Investigators questioned why a child who received care later showed signs of severe neglect. How could someone go from caring enough to provide medical care when he was younger to not caring at all? Police later theorized this shift could have reflected a change in custody, a breakdown in caregiving, or deliberate isolation. Could it be mental illness, lack of a human heart, or a soul? The grooming disturbed investigators deeply. Clean nails, fresh cut hair, no dirt beneath the fingernails. Little strange there. As one medical examiner later stated, this was not neglect, this was intention. This was not an accident, but deliberation. Philadelphia police launched one of the largest identification efforts of its era. More than 400,000 flyers were distributed. 400,000. That's a lot. Including inserts mailed with every gas bill in the city. Posters were sent nationwide, and international. Police recruits repeatedly combed the woods, finding items including a blue corduroy cap, a scarf, and a handkerchief, but none could be conclusively linked to the boy in the box. In a desperate attempt to humanize the boy in the box, police released a post-mortem photograph. In a desperate attempt to humanize the boy in the box, police released a post-mortem photograph showing the boy cleaned, dressed, and seated upright, as if alive. The image horrified the public, yet produced thousands of tips. None of them, sadly, were definitive. With no name, no claimant, the child became known as the boy in the box, and later, America's unknown child. Investigators described the response as overwhelming. Tips poured in from across the United States, Canada, and Europe. Every possible missing child report was reviewed. Interpol assistance was rare in a case like this in the 1950s, underscoring how desperate authorities were. One retired officer later recalled, "We thought someone would recognize him. A neighbor, a teacher, anyone. But no one did." And that is the start of the nightmare. Here's some theories that were floating around since he was discovered. Led by Remington Bristow, an employee of the Philadelphia Medical Examiner Office, acted on a psychic tip. He investigated a nearby foster home with a similar bassinet and blanket. Bristow uncovered that the foster family had multiple children, all accounted for, but records of short-term placement were incomplete. The police confirmed all children were present and alive. Bristow theorized that a foster child, perhaps an unrecorded or temporarily placed, might have accidentally or intentionally been killed and then concealed. Bristow never abandoned the theory, and the possibility remains an investigative discussion. The Martha theory. A woman known publicly as Martha claimed her abusive mother purchased a young boy, kept him isolated, and ultimately killed him. Her accounts included details matching forensic evidence, long-term abuse, isolation, concealment, and careful placement of the body. Police investigated and found aspects possible but not provable. Neighbors denied ever seeing a child. Records supporting the purchase and care of a boy were non-existent. They would be non-existent if he was illegally bought. Martha's mother is deceased, therefore there is no way to confirm this. While the theory remains unproven, it contributed valuable leads and investigative context. Sadly, things like this kept going on until the end of the 90s. Burial, exhumation, and forensic science catching up. The boy in the box was buried Potter's Field at Ivy Hill Cemetery. In 1998, he was reiterated with a headstone reading America's Unknown Child. His body was exhumed for DNA testing, but technology at the time produced incomplete genetic profiles. However, in the mid to late 2020s era, in 2019, advances in forensic genealogy allowed experts to extract high-quality DNA, specialists using nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA, and preserved bone fragments to establish genealogical connections. Forensic teams also reviewed historical census records, immigration documents, and obituaries to complement DNA evidence. Science finally caught up to patience and persistence. My favorite part, the breakthrough. Using forensic genetic genealogy, Identifiers International, led by Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick and Misty Gillis, reconstructed extended family trees from distant DNA. A relative's DNA uploaded to GEDmatch provides the crucial link. Now, on December 8th, 2022, police publicly identified the boy as Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13th, 1953. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw stated in a press release, "Whistle brew, as we have coffee cups." After decades of mystery and loss, we can finally confirm the identity of the child long known as America's Unknown Child. This is a solemn moment for the city and for the investigators who pursued this truth for decades. We can now say who he was. Our investigation continues to understand the circumstances of his death and bring justice wherever and whenever possible. Joseph's parents. What do we know? Well, not much. Mary Elizabeth Abel and Augustus John Zarelli were never married. Both later formed new families. Mary Elizabeth Abel died in 1999, and Augustus John Zarelli died in 2014. Investigators confirmed that neither parent never listed John on later legal documents, including marriage license, census records, or obituaries. No surviving family member ever recalls hearing his name mentioned. Never. Joseph's half-siblings learned of his existence in only 2022. Authorities emphasize that silence does not prove guilt, but the omission remains a major investigative point. On his birthday, January 13th, 2023, a new headstone bearing his full name was unveiled. Visitors leave toys, flowers, notes, and birthday cards. The memorial was intentionally designed to restore Joseph's individuality, rather than symbolize him solely as an unknown child. Joseph's death remains an open homicide investigation. Police continue to re-evaluate witness lists, addresses, and potential associates tied to Joseph's family. Time has complicated matters. Witnesses have died, memories have faded, and records have been lost. But detectives affirm the case remains active. Who likely had custody? Investigators believe Joseph lived in a private household with someone who had long-term access to him. The nature of his injuries suggests familiarity, and that is a word I have never been able to say. The nature of his injuries suggested familiarity and control. Custody does not equal guilt, but investigators study proximity to the child as a key factor in the reconstruction. Sadly, investigators believe Joseph knew his killer. Abuse escalated over time. The body's placement was deliberate and careful. No suspects have been named. Police assert the offender likely experienced fear of discovery, guilt, and conflict. No evidence suggested this organized crime, trafficking, or stranger involvement. Coffee? In 1950s, children born outside of marriage were hidden. Unwed mothers faced severe stigma. Families avoided authorities. Neighbors looked away. Institutions required proof before intervening. Silence was expected. Reporting abuse could ruin a reputation, which it should, invite shame, or provoke legal consequences. Joseph likely lived in isolation because society demanded it. Justice doesn't always come fast. Sometimes it lives in decades later, carrying DNA, dust, and a truth that refuses to be buried. And while the person who hurt him may never face a courtroom, Joseph is no longer invisible. We know who he was. We know he mattered. And we know, finally, he was here. We know finally, he was here. And that's where we leave it. Not with a assault case, not with handcuffs or courtroom gasps, but with something just as powerful. A name. that refuses to disappear again. Joseph Augustus Zarelli. For 65 years, this child was reduced to a headline, a box, a mystery, whispered about like a folklore. And yet the truth is painfully simple. Joseph didn't vanish in woods. He vanished in plain sight, in homes, in hallways, in moments where adults chose quiet over courage. Sometimes justice lives in decades late, dragging DNA, dusty files, and a whole lot of unanswered questions behind it. But late doesn't mean meaningless. Because Joseph has something now that can never be taken from him again. He has a name. He has a place. He has people saying it, remembering him loudly. And if someone out there still knows more than they've said, the clock never really runs out on guilt. So light a candle, leave a toy, sing him happy birthday, and maybe, just maybe, the next time something feels off, we don't look away. Because silence didn't protect Joseph. And it won't protect the next child. This has been brought to you by me, Melissa, Whistle Brew, caffeinated by secrets, where we don't just sip the tea. We spill it responsibly, with receipts, compassion, and a side eye sharp enough to cut through the quiet. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and don't let the truth get cold. We have coffee cups. We have other merch too, like little signs. We have shirts. If you would like to know more about the shirts and everything, there's going to be a link in the description. Please like, share, comment. I love you guys. Thank you for all the kind love and support. This is dedicated to two very special men in my life. They know who they are, and you guys better be watching this one. One requested this case, and the other gave me a confidence boost I needed. I love you too. Very much. Bye.